When I trained as an orthopedic surgeon, the very first time I performed an operation by myself, my boss had to scrub in to bail me out. Not my finest moment. With practice, I then went on to perform hundreds of operations completely solo. With the right framework, any skill can be mastered, no matter how complex it is. So in today's video, I want to share with you my 7-step process for mastering any skill at all. Each of these evidence-based steps have reliably taken me from novice to master in a number of skills, and if you apply them today, they'll help you to get ahead of everyone else. So hit that subscribe button, and let's jump into the first step, which is to do with meta-learning and your own mindset. Okay, for step 1, no matter what the skill is you're learning, everyone starts off with zero experience. The best athletes in the world struggle to begin with. Michael Jordan sucked when he started. Nobody is ever born a master. I spent hours reading, observing, and assisting in operations until I was deemed competent enough to actually perform one under guidance, let alone completely by myself. And hard work isn't enough either. It wasn't until I started working smarter, not harder, that my abilities got exponentially better. In my opinion, having a beginner's mind and being open to learning and not afraid to fail is the critical first step. You can check this out in books like The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, where it's absolutely imperative that we embrace failure and embrace the learning journey when we start out. Step 2 is to then get motivated. And I try and think how I can get exponentially motivated to learn absolutely anything. Because mastering things is fundamentally hard. Without a strong reason for learning a skill, you'll eventually give up and quit. The top 0.1% in any field are often fueled by an unmatched drive to be the very best. Now, the problem with lots of people and the reason that they don't succeed is that they give up too soon, because often they're learning things for people other than themselves. So try and put yourself in a position where it actually hurts you to fail. If you want to get good at running, why not sign up for a marathon and give yourself a deadline? Learning Italian? Move to Italy for a month and force yourself to communicate in that language. Put leverage over yourself and make sure you've got a reason that's motivating you on a daily basis to get up out of bed even when it's difficult and put that skill into practice. Step number 3 when I'm trying to master any skill is to focus on mastering the basics first before trying to move on to more advanced areas of that skill that I'm learning. Before I was allowed to stitch up a patient, I had to practice stitching on a banana. Daniel-san had to wax on and wax off in the Karate Kid movie, and if you skip ahead or think you're above the fundamentals, you will 100% lose. Every time I watch someone that's ahead of me in the skill that I'm learning, I'll try and come away with at least 3 action points that I can apply to my own technique. I'll try and practice the basics until I get bored, and then I'll force myself to keep going a little while longer until it becomes a habit. If we do this regularly, the boring basics become almost automated, and we know them so well that we can use them at any point. And this is when our skill level will really skyrocket. The fundamental basics are the building blocks that everything else comes from. Step 4 is something that is often overlooked and not talked about enough, and it's all about how seriously we take our time practicing the skill that we're learning. Pros practice in a completely different way to amateurs. Just clocking up the hours is not enough at all. We need to be relentless about making every second of every practice session count. One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received was to focus on one specific thing in a specific practice session. To do this, I'll try and break the skill I'm learning down into its components and then focus on each part individually, rather than trying to master everything all at once. For example, if I'm learning a new language, I might focus on spelling and writing short sentences first, and then focus on pronunciation of those words in a separate session. I'll then try and pull everything together in a further practice session to integrate these focused areas of practice and see the difference that it makes to our competence in the overall skill. Step 5 in our journey to mastery is probably one of the most important steps, but it's also one of the hardest to achieve when it comes to effective learning, and that's to embrace feedback, which is often much easier said than done. Amateurs respond to feedback, whereas pros actively seek it out. Now, we can get feedback on our skills from pretty much anyone, not just experts. Whether it's friends, peers, the public, or even ChatGPT can all help give us feedback on our current ability and work in a particular skill. For me, one of the most impactful feedback mechanisms that's exponentially improved my skill acquisition speed is to share my skills in public and let the feedback roll in. Whether this is sharing your learning journey in the form of a blog post, getting better at running a business by sharing wins and losses openly, or simply editing social media posts yourself if you're learning video editing, being open with your progress may sound scary at first, but it massively helps us to improve. Now, when asking for feedback, I always try and be as specific as possible. For example, when training in CrossFit, I'll ask the coaches to critique a specific exercise or form for that exercise, and then I'll try and integrate feedback into my next practice session. Everyone is a little bit scared of feedback, and for me, the thing that helped the most with this, because no one likes being criticized, is to remember that no one really cares about your current skill level, because everyone is much more focused on improving their own issues and getting better themselves. When I stopped overthinking and worrying about what other people thought and embraced feedback, I got better really quickly. The next step is then an extension of feedback, and it's to use data on your ability to improve further. Collecting and analysing our performance data takes us to the next level. Data shows us where we are and where we want to go, and this applies to absolutely everything. For me, I'll routinely track my progress in the gym by logging my sessions, weights lifted, and goals attained. For marketing in my businesses, I'll run experiments and split test content, letting the data decide which is the best outcome. The data you collect will depend on the skill that you're learning, and some examples might include the time taken to perform a specific task, emails sent compared to open rate and click-through rate of those emails, active recall questions answered correctly in a study session, and many more. In general, data should be relevant, specific, and in a defined time frame to make it actually useful rather than just collecting data for the sake of it. Okay, so a little bit controversial, but in my opinion, the idea that mastery comes from 100,000 hours spent doing something is just fundamentally wrong. And that's why the next step is to use the right tools to get you to mastery as quickly as possible, rather than just focusing on time spent. If we have the right tools, we can reduce our time to mastery considerably. Tools might be tech like ChatGPT, frameworks, feedback loops, or anything that helps us to learn smarter, not harder. The tools that save us time on our journey to skill mastery depend on what we're learning precisely. Learning a language, I've used Pimsleur audio tracks while out for a walk to quickly learn common conversations in between work sessions. Got an exam coming up? I'll optimize for evidence-based techniques like active recall and use online question banks to test my knowledge in the shortest time possible. Learning something like sales? Well, my businesses will use AI roleplay scenarios to learn faster than waiting on weekly sales coaching sessions that 99% of other companies focus on. Whatever it is you're learning, there will be a tool that you can adopt right now that will remove or reduce repetitive, tedious tasks and help you to spend your time focusing on the biggest gains like practice time and focusing on how you can upskill yourself in the funnest way possible. Okay, and that brings us to the final step, step 7, which in my opinion is the most important step and the one that I'd wish someone had sat me down and told me when I was 17 years old. We need to enjoy the journey and we need to be patient. Becoming the best at anything takes time. In my experience, it always takes way longer than you might expect to be the best at any skill. I spent 7 years training as a surgeon before doing a solo procedure, and I probably spent about 10 years learning things like coding and sales and marketing before I scaled a business to 8 figures. Nobody is an overnight success, regardless of what you see in the media. Any success story is just the tip of the iceberg of hard work. We need to embrace the grind and love the journey even when things get tough. Those people who are impatient or who want things too quickly often just end up defeating themselves, and sometimes being the best at something is more to do with sticking around when others quit or turning up to the gym or to a practice session when you don't feel like it, as it is to do with actual skill levels. Now, I've got a great video about how you can use tools like ChatGPT to take your learning and skill acquisition to the next level, which will pop up over here. Thanks so much for watching today's video and for being a subscriber. Do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and I'll catch you again in the next video. See ya.